Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain.
This episode of the Energy Stoners Cafe is sponsored by Passionate World Talk Radio and Lillian Caldwell. PassionateWorldTalkRadio.com. Welcome to the Energy Stoners Cafe. My name is Toni Quest, and I'm really happy that you're here. I like to interview the most interesting people I can find on the planet. So grab a cup of coffee, sit down, relax, and listen. You're going to find that these guests are so intriguing, you'll wonder why you didn't know about them before. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Energy Stoners Cafe. Thank you so much for coming to the show. I'm very excited all the time when I do this show, but this one I'm especially amped for because I have a guest on that I've consulted and worked with her for many years, and we're really good friends now. I love her so much, and she was gracious enough to do this interview about an event that I will be conducting shortly after this in a few days. I have interviewed so many people, and especially women I've interviewed who are in the arts and the humanities, and they're authors, and they do fantastic things. And it seems like these days women are so empowered, and so we've decided to celebrate this. But I want to talk to you about the celebration before we actually do it. Lucinda Clark is with me tonight, and she's a publisher, she's a writer, she's an agent, and she's a fantastic person, and she's one of my favorite people. And I consult with her on a lot of things, and I'm very confident about doing this. She's agreed to collaborate with me on a symposium Zoomcast that I'll be conducting shortly with women in the arts and humanities. And it seems that what everybody, the collective, has been going through in the past few months, in a strange way, has united us in spite of the fact that our experiences are so unique. They always say we're all in this together, but when you talk to the individual people, what I've learned is that everybody's situation's different. And that's what we have in common, is the diversity of our experience. I have interviewed some people who are historians, authors. They are artists in their own right. They conduct business of art, stage directors, film producers, playwrights, and it just is a plethora of endeavor that I'm just so, to this day, it's always new to me. It's kind of like every time I interview someone, it's like seeing fall foliage for the first time. So Lucinda, here we are again. What's the deal? What's going on? What has happened? What's changed for you?
What's changed for me? Okay, well, first, thanks for having me, TQ. It's always fun to be on your program. When you asked me to do this, I was thinking I'm here in Georgia. Oh boy, not another question about these crazy Georgians. The nation now watches with bated breath as we decide who's going to control the Senate, whether we helped to elect a president or to defeat a president. And so just in that regard, not to mention COVID, it's been quite interesting.
How so?
Well, for this year, I will be celebrating, me and many others in the poetry world, we'll be celebrating 20 years of showcasing poets. We have an annual poetry contest. We develop an anthology, and we showcase the winners from middle school to senior citizens. COVID's thrown a monkey wrench in that, and so we still did the competition, but we scaled it back. I published a book, a French translation titled Boston, My Blissful Winter, with a delightful woman who lives in Cape Cod. It took us a heck of a long time to get it done, but it is published. And actually, this weekend, she will be hosting a talk with the French Literary Center on the secret life of translators. And then the last part, with all this downtime, I've been able to do a lot of webinars and, to catch up on my reading with regards to business. And I'm working on opening up several I don't want to call them global markets because we're all global now that we're all online. But I'm working with several, mostly France, where I'm going to bring on another young lady. She's a journalist, newscaster who's from America who went to live in France, and her name is Nita Wiggins. And one last person, I've got to shout out Glenn Paris. He is a speculative fiction author who is getting ready to roll out a re-release of one of his novels, and he's writing like a fiend when he's not treating people. So, hey, Glenn, I'll just shout him out, show him I didn't forget.
So he has patients. He's a physician.
He's a rheumatologist.
So he's a writer as well.
Yes, he wrote and self-published several novels. One is on, they call it speculative fiction, and it's titled Dragon's Air. And I helped him get a publisher, and they are going to release it next year in graphic novel. There's a game that's coming out. We've been working on just getting him a little more polished as a writer.
Let's tell me more about Nita Wiggins.
Well, Nita wrote a book titled Civil Rights Baby. Funny thing is that she came and visited the U.S. from France, and somehow we ended up meeting for lunch. She was talking about how she was trying to get her French published novel into the U.S. markets. And I told her I would look into it for her. And now, actually tonight, she's going to be inducted into an authors club here in Augusta via Zoom. And we're going to work on marketing her book here in the United States. So she does French TV. She's covered the elections over there in France. And she teaches at the School of Journalism there, developing an English-based program in journalism.
What's the name of her program? Do you know? It sounds really intriguing. It really sparks interest in me. I'd like to learn more about her. Maybe I'll do an interview with her sometime. It sounds extraordinary.
Well, you can find everything about her on her website, www.nitawiggins.com.
www.nitawiggins.com.
Wiggins, yes. And she's been teaching and living in Paris for 10 years. The school is the ESJ School of Journalism. It's one of the oldest schools of journalism. I think it's the first school of journalism. I'm still getting up on all of her facts, but she teaches the students there how to work on television.
Nice.
So she's a great lady, and looking forward to working with her.
So she's living there, and she's actually based in France right now?
She's based in Paris, France. She's lived there for 10 years.
Sounds very interesting. And I'm really interested in the kind of things that women are doing right now, because it seems that there is sort of a feeling of empowerment without even talking about the politics at all. But, there's just sort of a vibration in the air that feels good. If I had a daughter right now, I'd be like over the moon that I could actually show her how it's been demonstrated that she can do this, this, and this. You'd be one of the people that I'd tell her to look up to, Lucinda. I think it's wonderful. Nita Wiggins is doing her thing, and what I've found, and I'm wondering if you feel the same way, that what's happened, and I've noticed this, I've observed this, is that women just say, forget all the protocol that has been established, and they're just going out and just doing it.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned a daughter. You know my daughter, Jessica.
I sure do, yes.
In the middle of a pandemic, she moves back to Arizona to train for her master's. You'd think that'd be enough, but she gets in the car with her brother. She puts all of her stuff in there, and they ride across country. So they drop her stuff off in Arizona, and then they continue on to San Diego because, well, the roads are clear. The flights are cheap. And so this is the thinking of young, empowered people, because she went with her brother. But my daughter has traveled the world alone. And so when I think about women who are empowered today, I think it's more women who are in maybe the baby boomers generation who are really feeling like, wow, we are finally coming into our own.
Yeah.
If you think about Vice President-elect Harris, if you think about what she represents, she's a woman of color. not just a Black woman, she's a Jamaican. And she's from India. I mean, if you've ever heard her story, there's a merging of cultures there. She went to all Black schools, HBCUs. Shout out. So she gives power to shout at, and she belongs to a sorority. Unfortunately, she didn't pick Delta. But, us Deltas here, we shout her out anyway.
I think it all counts,
But just if you think about Hillary, I don't know how people feel politically, but I'm just going to say it. Woman got robbed. And so when I think about Stacey Abrams, I worked on her campaign here in Georgia. Woman got robbed.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm not sounding angry. I thought I was over it, but seeing Kamala Harris walk across the stage victorious, it makes you forget all of that.
Yes.
It changes so much. It just really does.
It seems like the climate, just in terms of business, has changed with the politics changing. I know we've interviewed some people on this particular podcast, and the subject came up about how, the arts often reflect the politics of the time. And I'm seeing a little of that already. It's almost like it's just there for you. I'm not going to say I wish I was younger, but I'm from that generation that fought for women's rights. I kind of came of age as a woman at the beginning and the peak of the women's movement, of the sexual revolution. And now look where we are.
No, I agree. But I think that when they say that women are politically empowered now, that whole movement started about 3 years ago. I think when the country elected a man who could actually be caught on mic saying some of the things that he said, and when you think about all the powerful men who were brought down because women had you as a woman, you literally had to do things to keep to be able to keep your job. And so I think when Donald Trump came to power he should have been dead, people said, because when they released the video, women just had enough. I mean, think about it. Bill Cosby, all the men who have been taken down after years and years of women being mistreated. So I think that what you're seeing now, if COVID had not occurred, we would be much further along. Women were holding political offices, we're CEOs, we are running colleges, we're doing things, and we're highly visible now. I would say that it started a few years ago with the Me Too movement, which had been going on, I think, at least 10 years in the background.
It's interesting, because I think at least a lot of things happened all at once. It was that Trump remark, and it was also Harvey Weinstein. And it's interesting, when that happened, a lot of people like myself said that, wow, this kind of thing's been happening for years. Why do they care now?
Because Hillary lost.
And also to think that, I complained about it then and no one did anything about it then. And, it's interesting now that, people, I don't want to actually put down an entire gender, but I think that people are starting to notice and look at things differently. I'm having these different kinds of conversations like this with people a lot. But getting back to what you're doing is that you're actually publishing women. When you talk about Nita Wiggins, I'm very impressed with the fact that, and we had interviewed someone else, Lee Trafari, that would be like living in this country, and then they decide that the world is getting smaller, so it doesn't seem like such a big stretch to just go across the ocean to another country. And so she's living over there as an American in England. And Nita Wiggins, she's been doing this for a while, it sounds like, this transcontinental life of hers, and creating the whole time.
Well, the thing about Nita is that she used to do interviews for ESPN, the station in Texas. And in her book, she talks about how she is of the baby boomers generation, born here in the South, and how she wanted to be not just a newscaster, but a sports newscaster. When you think about sports and newscasters, it's all male, the old boys, for real. She's done quite a few interviews. She did Muhammad Ali. She's oh man, I don't have her repertoire in front of me, but if you just go to her website, she's interviewed some of the great sports figures of all time. She just started realizing that the stress of it, they call them microaggressions now. They've got a name for everything. When you're a woman and then you're a woman of color, you go into situations and you can just tell that they're just being frayed with the little microaggressions you have to deal with every time you go in to make a stand. And it caused some health problems for her.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. The book is fascinating. I would suggest it for everyone. It's titled Civil Rights Baby, and it's by Nita Wiggins. It's a fascinating take on how women who are trying to strive for something outside of just being a housewife and taking care of the kids and, being a good person at church, how when you want something bigger and you're looking around, where's the example? And you cannot find it. You've got to make that path. You've got to make that path on your own. As I'm sharing this with you, I'm just honored to be working with her. We have conversations and she's done quite a bit. And actually coming full circle with the question you asked me, that's what's been happening with what I'm doing. It's not just publishing, it's promoting, it's marketing, it's licensing, it's all kinds of things.
Right.
What I'm finding since we've been in lockdown is that I no longer want to just be pigeonholed as a publisher. I want to go back to my original love, which was agency work. I loved that. I loved it a lot. And now that my kids are grown, I can go back to it full time.
Tell the audience what you mean when you say agency work. I don't think everyone understands what that is.
Well, it's been about 30 years now. When I first started, I used to represent African American authors. So I had a gallery in Philadelphia. I sold paintings. I sold prints. I partnered with a young lady, and she sold all of the African materials, the dolls, and we had an art gallery. And then my kids were born, and my husband was in his practice. And I'm not mad. I'm just stating fact. A choice has to be made. You have small children and two-career family. I was not going to have a nanny raise my children. And so I opted to take my business and work from home. And the only way I was able to do that, short of having people come in the house and, look at the artwork and everything, is I went to producing shows like at Temple University and other places like that. And that became a great way to do it. And so I went from selling Black art, as it was known at the time, to actually helping artists put their artwork on like checks, licensing.
Yeah, licensing.
And then I think I met you around that time. And so we started working together, and we did a couple of things where we put it on. Well, we didn't do the book covers till later, but working with artists to help them understand how they can do print work and then license their work to other organizations or put it on other items that was in development.
I'm going to tell the audience that what I found about you, Lucinda, is that you were very astute. I was kind of a neophyte. I always would say to myself, if I could just reproduce my art and sell it that way, but no one really understood. I wasn't able to articulate what I was trying to do. And then you came along, and then you saw a piece that I did. And I thought, to this day, I realized that you knew how to kind of feature a certain aspect of an artist's art. I won an award at a local contest, juried exhibition, and you saw the piece, and the timing was right. You were launching one of the issues of your series, View from the Middle of the Road. You had decided to feature African American poets, and I just want to share with the audience is that you were ready for me, and I was ready for you. The timing was like the perfect storm. So you saw this piece that was an award-winning piece. I think you named the book after my piece, or the book was named after, it had a name, and you just jumped on it because you've always been so excellent with your timing. That's why I'm glad you went back to agency. This interview might get you a lot of phone calls that you didn't anticipate, but you represented me in a beautiful way, and I just followed your lead. I'll say that if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for what you did, I might not be sitting here talking to you.
The thing I want to say, and this is for every woman who listens to this interview, there's two things that happen, and a lot of it has to do with, and I don't want to say your upbringing, but it's all your state of mind. The universe is conspiring to bring about your success and happiness.
You got to believe it.
And so, like when I was sharing in the beginning, I had a vision that I was going to, take on the world and do this art thing, having studied biology and been in a year in medical school and all that. I knew that this was what I was going to do. And the thing is that everything came together. Every time I said, you know what, I think I should go get a job. Boom. The next contract would come.
It's weird how that happens.
The next talent would come along, and it's been like that. With regards to View from the Middle of the Road, it's just funny that you mentioned that, because I came here to the South. Black art wasn't thought of the same. I'll just say it like that. And so I said, I started working with poets. And I said, how hard can this be? I'm going to write some poems. I got my kids. I said, come on, kids, write some poems. So we sat down and we wrote some poems. And that was the first View. And the artwork for that, I met the young lady for the artwork on that front cover the same way. That's one of the cornerstones. We always find a visual artist and we make their art the cover. So that's funny that you brought that up. We're working on number 6 now.
Wow.
Yeah. And so now we're doing translations. We're adding all kinds of stuff in there. So, it's been a good run.
You do publish authors in different languages. I know that you do that. And I don't know if I think the world should know it.
We completed the French translation. I worked with a Iranian poet, and we did a Farsi and English translation.
That's Sheba Kabase.
Mm-hmm. Side by side. I think you interviewed Shima.
I did a long time ago, yes.
Yeah, you remember Stephanie Dale from Australia?
I sure do.
She's still going walkabout down in
she's doing her thing
down in Australia. But I worked with a young lady from Uruguay. She wrote a memoir in Spanish about her abusive marriage. We did an excerpt, and I've learned so much about translation, being in lockdown. I think that we're going to come back. But this young lady, she wrote a screenplay. She's down there teaching in Uruguay. Her name is Silvana Marconi. Her book is titled I Survived. She's doing some great things down there. But yeah, I love translation now. Still love poetry. We'll see what lockdown can do. If you open it up, you can do all kinds of things.
Yes.
A poem that I wrote titled Mantra of a Bridge Builder. I had this visual that I was going to get it translated into like 28 languages. I was going to get it made into a song, maybe even make a poem. And I've got it translated now, I think, in 8 languages.
Beautiful.
Spanish, Russian, Italian, and Spanish. So I'm looking for translators. If you want to help me with that project, I'll put that out in the universe.
Yeah, put it out there because there are translators there. It's interesting because, as you mentioned, poetry, because in the beginning of the lockdown, I guess everybody's situation is different. I didn't have such a problem with it, maybe a little bit, but my inclination was to write some poems and record them, which I worked with you some months ago, sort of presenting some of those poems. It's part of the ongoing project I have now on doing an audio anthology of poetry. And my instinct was to translate some of it. And a lot of it is because people have talked about things they were doing right before the lockdown. I was on the cusp of romance right before the lockdown and couldn't have that date. And there was a frustration to it. But I said, well, it wasn't meant to be. And what I did was I wrote a poem and I translated it into French. Actually, I wrote it in French in my head and translated it back to English and then back to French. I'm not a translator, but I think that what happens in the quiet of your existence, you get a lot of things that just kind of come to you and you realize there are things that you can do that you did not realize you could do.
Exactly.
And I'm seeing this in a lot of women that I've been talking to in particular that have been sort of doing things all along. And so for this symposium series that we're going to start on the 15th of this month, I'm really very amped to ask all of these and fantastic women how they coped with the pandemic. I think that what's happened, I say online a bit, is there's been sort of a union, like a uniting. Collaboration is not unusual anymore. And we're finding that there are things that we can do together. You're always working on something, Lucinda. One thing I want to tell the audience about you is what I admire is that you're like the master of planning, you know? I have a tendency to wing it. People think I'm winging. I say the words, but really in reality, it was always, in my mind anyway. And it's actually organized in my mind. I just don't always write it down. Although I admire some of my colleagues that really go by notes. I think spontaneity presents itself for me, as a style.
Well, I was going to say, and sometimes for the guests, a little rash, because it's if you're used to organizing and having a structure and having it be just so, but it's funny that we're talking about COVID and things we learn or things we learn to let go. Because I tell you, TQ, I had a schedule, I had it all planned out. I knew where I was going to be right up to December. It was going, and then it was not.
Yeah, it came to a grinding halt.
Oh my God, grinding halt. It was just like nothing. It's not even like, okay, we're going to go to plan B. I mean, there were plans and then there was nothing. And so you have to improvise. You have to let go of it. It's got to be a certain way. And I think they use the word chill. Oh, you're so chill now, And
it's a nice way to be. It is, in getting back to the spontaneity thing with an interview. And I think Jim, who directs my show, I think he understands what happens with the spontaneity is I ask a question and it makes it more interesting. I just find that people open up when they don't know what's coming. I don't try to do anything that is going to embarrass anybody, but I think it's important for my particular show for people to present themselves in a more organic way. And then I think the listener enjoys it and appreciates it as being purely authentic as opposed to having a planned list of questions. I've been interviewed that way. And I'm going to be interviewing that way to someone in another country soon because they want me to interview an artist. But because of a language barrier, I'm going to use a translation program and I might actually write it out. And in the meantime, I'm going to seek out live translators to do this interview.
Get a translator who knows the language in real time. If you use Google Translate or some, software program, you will miss the true organicness that you strive for. So depending on what the language is, let me know. We could put a call out.
Sounds like good. Between the two of us, we know plenty of people.
And the other thing, getting back to what you were saying about the organicness of your interview, you do have a certain style where a person can be put at ease if they open themselves up to the experience.
Exactly.
Yeah, we've done this enough times. I always say, now, I hate.
I know you do.
Well, it's organic. I'm like, whatever.
No, that's my style. We've done interviews here with people. I mean, I learned from the interviews. Everybody I've interviewed, I'll say 90% of the people I've interviewed, and I've interviewed a lot of people over the past, 12 years or more, I've come away with knowledge, things I never knew. Even this interview, I learned some things I never knew. So I look at it that way. It's a learning experience. And I guess as an educator, we call that quantum learning, even though I'm not teaching you and you're not teaching me, but you are doing that organically. And I think it happens. And I like to share it with the audience. But, getting back to you, talking about this series we're going to do with women in the arts and humanity, all of these women that are on this particular Zoomcast, I've interviewed them. And I've learned something from all of them. And I'm going to try to take the same vibe and bring it to this, but I am going to take some advisement from you. I'll make some planning in terms of the questions I'll ask. And so on that note, what I'll say is looking forward to seeing you on Sunday, Lucinda. Yeah.
Yes. Same here. Same here. It was fun.
And I love doing this. There's a selfishness about it. Why I do this. There's a selfishness, and it's not a publicity thing for me. It's because I'm an information and knowledge junkie. And so I was raised to always be associated with people that know something more than I do, rather than trying to get people that know less. And you always find someone that knows more. And that's why you're my friend, Lucinda. And on that note, I'm going to tell the audience to check out Lucinda Clark online. Go to even PRA Publishing or View from the Middle of the Road. You'll see a series of books that she's published. It's her line. And you'll also see who she represents, and you'll be able to contact her.
And don't forget Poetry Matters Project.
Yeah, the Poetry Matters Project. I think it's celebrating like 20 or 30 years of existence. 20 years of existence. And what I'll say to the audience is please tune in again to the Energy Stoners Cafe. Check me out. Follow me online because I'm always doing something. And I really appreciate the fact that I can contribute something to the collective. We really are all in this together, and we have to get through this together and keep doing your own thing because it all counts. And I thank everybody for coming to the Energy Stoners Cafe. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Energy Stoners Cafe.
Thank you for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. You can listen to this program all over again by going over to https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. You can also hear it on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon Alexa, AMFM247.com every Tuesday evening between 8 and 9 p.m. YouTube, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, and all the other podcast directories one can find on the internet.